Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In today's video I'd like to show you the difference between IQueryable, IEnumerable, toArray and all those materialization techniques that we use daily when we access the database. For this I have prepared .NET 10 Minimal API project. It's a very simple web API. We only reference PostgreSQL database and of course Entity Framework Core. So let's take a look at the program CS. Also super simple, only one service is registered here, DB context, and we map to the product's endpoints. So the DB context is also straightforward. We have only one table, products, and we specify a connection string to the PostgreSQL database. And we also configured here the queries that are executed against the database are also displayed in the console. And lastly, on model creating, I also see the database. We can see here I insert 1000 random products from different countries, different product names, the random seed here, and return products which will be basically inserted in the database. For this, we can see the migration. We can see here table products, and here 1000 random products are inserted. Let's take a look at the actual product entity. It's just also super straightforward: ID, name, price, amount in stock, and country. Okay, so now let's see actual difference and what are the interesting points we can tackle. So for this, I open the extension class. So we'll have here map products. We map to the API/products, and I prepared 5 different queries. Let's minimize this for now. I prepared 5 different queries: V1, V2, V3, V4, and V5. And I believe there are some interesting points here. Here we will come back to this. Some interesting points here that I want to show you. So before we actually go and run scripts to execute these endpoints, I would like you to actually think and try to answer 3 questions. First, when will be the SQL, basically each query, each endpoint will execute at least one SQL statement to the database, and I want you to know exactly how many will be, then what kind of query will be, or queries, it depends, and lastly also on which line of code the query will be executed at the database also. So these 3 questions are very important. We're going to see different use cases, and we're going to start with V1. So very simple example. So we can see here directly on the DB set, we specify toArray. So we load everything in the memory and then we filter. So here, as you can imagine, it's going to be one query. We can confirm it now. Let's start the application. You can see application is running. I prepared also HTTP file to send a request. It's the same API/products. And let's go to the V1. And let's open the console. We can see here we go to array. Once this line is executed, we populated the items variable with all the products. So we can see here there are 1000 products and all of them are loaded in the memory right now. So they're inside the application, which is not ideal in this use case because later we can see here we filter, and this returns IEnumerable already. So, and then once we return actually the results of this endpoint, this IEnumerable is also enumerated, and we can see in our service that we return all the products from France, because in the query I specified that France was the country. So this is the use case, the first one, which we saw that it's not efficient to load this 1000 products and only then filter. So for this, there is another query, V2, and we can see here we do not use toArray immediately. It's only used here on 3rd line of code. And in here, what's interesting, we actually first we use different where statements, and where on a DB set returns IQueryable. We can see it here. And IQueryable is actually allows us to build queries dynamically to execute them against the database. So for example, we saw in previous endpoint that we generated SQL statement without where clause. It directly returns us 1000 rows. If we had 1 million rows, it will give us back 1 million rows, which is very, very not efficient for this use case. So now let's see what can be done with actually where, or what kind of query will be generated. For this I specified here also breakpoint, and let's execute. I would like to also clear the console. And let's go step by step. So we specify first, we define the variable, and we can see here nothing is displayed in the console, which means there is no query that is executed for now against the database. We specify another condition. We can see here we also mention amount in stock, and we step in. We can see here still nothing, and now when we do toArray, now again the query is generated, and this time we can see here our two conditions are specified here, and this returns us only 105 products. So unlike before, it was all those products, above 100 products were, no, sorry, all 1000 rows of products were generated and were populated directly in the memory of the application. And finally we return. So let's take a look. Yes, here we have our all 105 products with amount in stock above 30. Now there was the second query, and we saw how IQueryable actually helps us and optimizes our performance of our application, both for the database and for the backend service. Now let's take a look at the third query. So it's slightly different. It still takes the same amount of parameters. However, here we count. So in here, pay attention, we also return different result. So let's imagine the client, the caller of this API, is interested in knowing how many in total products are in the database, which we know here is 1000, but can be different. Well, here is 1000, of course. Now also want to know how many products are in a country. So in this country, and you can see here in the country, there is only one filter, only country, so we don't specify amount in stock. And lastly, what are the products in this country, which specify both conditions. Product is in this country, obviously, and also its amount in stock is above amount in stock specified by the client. So let's see how many queries will be generated. For this, I specify breakpoint, and let's execute. Let's again clear the buffer. Okay, so we just executed, defined the variable total count, and we can see here immediately first query is already displayed. It's because we use the count. So count returns a scalar value, in this case it's integer, and you cannot query and build anything on integer. Once you need integer, this is the end. So you will get your integer back. And then here we specify second count with the condition. And we can see here again another query generated immediately, but this time with condition, with where clause. And let's take a look, for example, in total there are 1000, so it's integer, and products in France, there are 112 of them. Now we specify where clause to just generate and return. We saw this previously, and except that here we specify two conditions in one place, and we just return the answer. And we can see here IQueryable also generated in the end response. Not just the response, the console log. Let's take a look at the service. There was one timeout exception. It's okay, but we can re-execute it. Query 3, continue, services, and we can see here our answer. 1112 and all the products from France with specified amount in stock. Great, now we saw here this example generated actually 3 queries. So 3 queries are not enough. There is lots of back and forth and network stress, so we can actually a little bit improve it. It's not necessarily improvement, but see a different approach, because sometimes it might be actually preferred. So we can see here it's exactly almost the same query, except here I return to list. That means I just load it instantly to the memory, and only from there, from this to list, I count. So you can imagine already how many queries it's going to be, but still let's take a look. Query number 4, let's clear again buffer, and we here go to list, we step in, we can see already again the same the very basic with the select statement with all the items, all the products is generated, is executed, 1000 products, 1000 rows. This is exactly as in V1, and I mentioned at that time that it's not useful and it's not efficient, but let's see why in this example it might be actually efficient. So we'll continue, now we do count, and we can see obviously here there is no SQL query because we count already on the list, which is a pure runtime object, so we just use directly methods in there, methods of this object. And then we continue. Again, now nothing there because this is from all products, and we return. So we saw here overall only one query, and we got yet the same result. Now why this may be preferred? You can see here we only had one query. However, we give quite more stress on our application. So we didn't populate all 1000 rows. So again, it depends. So we can see here sometimes, imagine if you knew you have 8 or only 10, let's say it was not products but categories. So sometimes it is preferred to actually avoid those round trips and several calls to the database. Instead, just load in memory and then filter from memory. So this is why it's also important sometimes to know when to use IQueryable and when to avoid and prefer another alternatives. You have to always know the trade-offs. It's always trade-offs. And final endpoint, V5, and here I use IEnumerable. It's obviously different from IQueryable or toList to array. So still the same query, only one difference is IEnumerable, and then we use count on this IEnumerable answer, IEnumerable variable. So we see here IEnumerable product. So the overall query is the same, only this IEnumerable different. So besides this, the endpoint is exactly the same, and we can see here writer is already warning us that there might be multiple enumeration, and in this case it is right. We'll see and take a look right now. So query endpoint is hit. There is no SQL statements yet. We cleared the buffer, and let's take a look. We do IEnumerable. Sorry, I believe I changed something. Yes, we do IEnumerable. We go step in, no queries. Now we actually specify count on IEnumerable, and we can see here we got the query, but it's a very basic query. There is no where statement. We continue with where. So far nothing because it's also IEnumerable, and then we return, and we got 2 more SQL statements. Now this is very interesting. Why? And you see all of these 3 SQL statements in this case, they're the same. There is no where, there is no condition, and IEnumerable uses LINQ to objects instead of LINQ to entities. Why is this like this? Is because it's IEnumerable and it's deferred. So execution of IEnumerable overall is deferred. That means it will be only executed later once it's needed. So for example, when you use count, or when you return it, when you need to iterate through it, or when you call toList to array. So all of those methods actually force execution and cost and trigger the enumeration. Now, in here, however, you can see here there is no where, no statement, and that's why we got even the warnings that there can be possible multiple enumeration. But then you might be thinking, why would you prefer that IEnumerable? Well, still some cases might be that you might want to defer the execution. So you want to build your query, so you want to stop building the query. For example, like in this case, you can see it's IEnumerable. Basically, everything after that will not participate in the query building process. It's fixed, and that's why all of these 3 queries, they're the same. So sometimes you want to do this, but you don't want to load it immediately to your memory. So for example, by calling to array or to list. Another reason to use IEnumerable is that expression trees are limited. Not all C# code can be directly translated to the provider, to the SQL, for example, in this case, since we use PostgreSQL. So the specific code, for example, let's say if you call your custom method inside the expression tree, that custom method is not known to the SQL. For these reasons, it's a common practice to use IEnumerable, and then once enumerable is called, the date is available to your application, and any C# code can be called on that. So that's why IEnumerable might be preferred. However, you have to understand that you might cause multiple enumerations, and this will actually result in the worst performance. So just check, let's see we got the same answer or not of our API call, and I believe it is the same. So I hope you liked this video and found it useful. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.